All right, so we're moving on with episode 2 of the 3-body problem. And the next technique that we're going to look at is sliding planes. So let's first look at a shot and then we'll talk about it. So the point of this kind of shot is that we've chosen both a lens and a framing that basically allows the foreground and the background to move completely independently. And that creates almost like this 2D feeling, like a platformer game or like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. And the result is just this very interesting pixel movement in the frame, because you have part of the frame that's moving and another part that's standing still. And you get there by having a great distance between the foreground and the background with almost nothing in between, and then a pretty long lens. And what we get is just the ability to control the foreground and the background completely separately. And here's another one. So we're sliding to the right, and notice that the background is almost standing still. So it's only the foreground that's sliding in. And at least to me, that feels like very tight storytelling, like we're guiding the viewer to what they're supposed to see. And it just looks very classy. And here we are again. The foreground is moving, but the background is standing completely still. And I guess it's also just kind of otherworldly or artistic to look at, because this is not something you could do with your own eyes. Like, you need at the very least a longer lens. And again here in a slight variation, this is actually what's called a parallel track, because we're out here and they're back there, and we're matching their movement even as we're tracking through heavy foreground. But we get that kind of feeling again, like a platformer, like we have these planes that are sliding through the frame. I don't know why it's interesting. I just love looking at it. And here's a much smaller version. So basically, this is what would have been a lock shot, but because we're tracking a little bit out here, you get this movement, this elegant evolution in the shot of what would otherwise have just been a lock shot. Because the foreground is sliding by itself, the rest of the room is almost standing still. And here, again, this is something that might have been a lock shot, but because we're tracking sideways, we're creating this plane of movement in the foreground, even as everything else is standing still. And this is something that, for example, Kurosawa did really well, because you would have all these shots that would have basically just been a lock shot, but because he's putting this something that moves in the background or something that moves in the foreground, suddenly 30 seconds doesn't feel like 30 seconds. Time passes in a different way when you have things that are moving just a little bit like this. And next we have a whole bunch of sympathetic moves, because why not? So if you remember from the Mad Max Fury Road episode, because they also really liked them some sympathetic moves. So basically a sympathetic move is that we're drifting along something that's happening, but at a slower speed. We're kind of like a ghost. We're floating in their direction. What that creates is that the pixels here are moving in this direction, while the pixels on the ground are moving in the other direction. And that creates like a juxtaposition of the movement in the frame. That notice that stuff on the ground is coming towards us while she's moving in the other direction. And it's, I don't know, there's something mesmerizing about it. So that's a sympathetic move, and they have a whole bunch of those, including some that aren't actually good. But first, here's one that's fantastic. Like, this is textbook sympathetic move. So notice that the ocean is coming towards us while the helicopter is moving upwards in the frame. Here's another one. We're just drifting with the truck, but not as fast. And it creates these two axes of movement in the frame again. It's like it works on more levels. But they unfortunately have a lot of these shots where they only do it for a little bit and then they lock. So right now we're slower than him and he like glides into the frame. But then the moment we're locked on him, it's just following him, and we're down to one axis of movement here. But in the beginning, there's two directions of movement.
Scotland Yard have been helpful for a change.
Here's another one again. Look, road is going downwards, car is going upwards, but only for a little bit. And then as soon as we're tracked on it, it's sparring. They should have kept going here. Like, they should have just let the police car move towards the top of the frame. Then they could keep the effect going. And again here, it's a pity, because this one is really clear in the beginning. So the road pixels are going downwards and the car pixels are going upwards, but only for a little bit, and then as soon as we're locking on it, the shot just flattens out. And then finally on Sympathetic Moves, they have a move here that I haven't really seen that often, and it's a great idea, something to remember to do. So it's the exact opposite, is that we're drifting slower, and that means that he's kind of bringing himself into the frame, walking closer and closer to the camera, and it's even better. He walks out of the frame. I love this shot. This is fantastic. So we're going slower than him, and that's what allows him to catch up to us. So it becomes like a more personal moment. And then having people exit out of the frame is always a great idea because it feels like they're like on to the next step. So it drives the pacing forward to let people drift out of the frame at the end. So this is a beautiful shot. Kudos to whoever came up with that. And finally, we have a couple of converges, which is that the camera and the character move towards each other, giving kind of a feeling of a crucial moment or double speed. And what's especially cool in a couple of these is that they're actually converging around something specific in the middle, like a character. So check this out. We're converging as he's coming out, but also converging around her. So it's like everything concentrates in a really important moment here. And that's what converges do, and it works every time. And same thing again here. We converge around the guy in the middle. So he walks forward and we track towards him and basically concentrating around the guy in the middle.
I am not.
This is beautiful camera work.
No, sir. I rejected the offer.
You did.
And finally on Converges, here's probably one of the biggest converges I've ever seen. Like it's a helicopter converge. So helicopter's coming towards us as we're coming towards the helicopter. I mean, it doesn't get much more epic. I mean, that's a blockbuster right there. And believe it or not, that's actually all the camera work I could find in Three Body Problem, because it's not one of those things. Like it's a quiet, slowly developing drama, but then when they have the chance, they really do spectacular camera work. I have one more thing that I need to throw in here, because they have a real old school handoff. She walks out, and we end on him.
As soon as I saw your message.
Just a little move that was in there, and handoffs are good, so we should remember to do them. Anyway, I hope you thought that was fun, and I'll see you next time.
I saw your message.